If you want your kids to eat vegetables, it's right here. Watch the next episode of the Jamaica Kitchen with me, Drew, your host. Thank you again for joining me. My name is Drew, and today we're going to do shepherd's pie. And one of the authentic ways of making shepherd's pie is using ground beef and ground lamb. But today we're just going to use ground beef. Ground lamb's kind of hard to come by unless you have your butcher actually grind it for you, and it can be expensive. I don't find that much difference between the flavors so much, so I just like to use the ground beef. And today we're going to use a coarse ground beef. Just makes it a little better texture. Some years ago my sister made this dish for me, and she adds the frozen vegetables to it, which I thought was a really smart way, especially if you're having a hard time getting your kids to eat vegetables. So let's have a look at our ingredients for today. And for our ingredients today, we have 2 pounds of coarsely ground beef, and this is the 2080. I like to use the coarse ground. When it cooks, it just makes a slightly larger granule than the finer grind, and it gives it just a more meaty substance to it. And then we're going to also use, in lieu of Bisto, brown gravy mix, which I find quite compatible to the Bisto. And then we have half a teaspoon of allspice, and then 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom. And I like to use the cardamom because it gives us a floral freshness to the flavor. And then we use 3 teaspoons of herb de Provence, and then 3 teaspoons of garlic powder. We also have 5 fresh garlic cloves chopped, 1 large onion chopped, and this is a great way to get your kids to eat vegetables. We have 1 pound of organic mixed vegetables, and it's corn, carrots, peas and green beans. And this is a really easy way to get your kids to eat vegetables, because I put it in the gravy and it just makes it an amazing way of them tolerating it. Well, of course you're going to need some butter and some whole milk and potatoes to make mashed potatoes. Usually add a little bit of whipping cream, but I don't have any today, unfortunately. So that's our ingredients today. Of course we're going to add salt and pepper to taste all through the cooking process. Alright, let's get started. So in my Dutch pot I have about a tablespoon of bacon fat, bacon grease, and it's just to start off my browning process on the ground beef. I'm just going to go ahead and start my browning. As I said before, this is about 2 pounds, and this is a coarse grind, and it just gives it a nice meaty texture. So as our beef is browning, I like to add my dry ingredients, and there goes in my cardamom, and now my allspice, and of course my garlic powder, and I'm even going to add my herb de Provence. Good mix in. Alright, nice good mixing. Just keep on browning, and then we're going to add our other ingredients. And in this pot I have approximately 3 pounds of butter gold potatoes. You can use anyone that you particularly care for smashed potatoes. There's about twice as much water in the pot as there is potatoes. That way you get a good amount of water and you are not condensing the starches. And there's also approximately a quarter cup of salt. Always salt your potatoes. Don't try to salt your potatoes after the cooking process. Do it while it's cooking on your stove. So here's our meat, nicely browned. As you can see, the pieces are slightly larger than typical. And I've made this both with the lamb and beef, and then obviously just the beef by itself. And I think it's tasty. I think it's just as delicious either way. And the lamb is an expensive addition to something that's really good without it. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and add our onions and garlic to the pot. And let these cook down for a while. Before we add our gravy mix and our vegetables. Okay. And as you can see from the beginning, we haven't had any salt in here as of yet. And I usually salt to taste later if I need to add any additional salt. But I like to use my beef base as my salt. And this way you add in really great beef flavor and your necessary salt at the same time. There is also salt in the gravy mix, so you've got to be careful and not add too much. But it just boosts the beef flavor quite substantially and gives you your necessary salt. And we're going to add some black pepper to taste when we finish. And now we're going to go ahead and add our frozen vegetables. Not so frozen, they've been sitting there for a while, so they're starting to thaw some. As I said before, if you have trouble getting your kids to eat vegetables, this is a great way of doing it. Smothered in gravy. You don't have any problems having your kids eat this. The first time I saw the vegetables in this is when my sister made it, and she actually had the meat, then a layer of the vegetables, and then the mashed potatoes on top. And since I've been doing it, and I do it this way, I just mix the vegetables straight into the meat, which I find it might not look as pretty as when she does it, but I think it tastes a little better because the vegetables has the chance to soak up some of the flavors of the gravy. Alright, let that continue to warm through a bit, and then we're going to add our gravy mix. Okay, it's time to add our gravy mix. This is browned and warmed all the way through. So in this jug I have 2 cups of water and 4 tablespoons of the gravy mix. And we're making quite a bit of gravy, even though not all of this gravy will go into the shepherd's pie. Some of it we will keep out to use as a gravy later after the shepherd's pie is cooked. turn this down and let it simmer for about 15 minutes or so. And we'll check on it then. Okay, it's cooking for about 15 minutes. Looks pretty good. It's really thick gravy, very rich color. We're going to go ahead and taste to see if we need to add any salt. Nope, no salt needed. As I said, there's salt in the gravy mix, plus obviously the beef base has quite a bit of salt in it too. But we are going to add some black pepper, and this is about a teaspoon of black pepper. Or you can add to your taste. Okay. Give it a couple more minutes and then we're going to start preparing our baking pan. Okay, so meat is now cooked. It's cooked all the way through and meat's nice and tender and the vegetables are cooked. So now we're going to go ahead and add our meat to this bowl, and we're going to leave the majority of the gravy inside the pot. And the purpose of trying to leave as much of this gravy in the pot as possible is so as it's cooking in the oven, you won't have an excess amount of gravy in there to bubble up through the potatoes. And then at the end of the cooking process, when you've served, you still have some gravy left that you can add to the side. See, I am removing as much of the gravy out of here as possible, but just let it drain through. Notice I'm using a slotted spoon, and we're just going to remove the majority of the gravy out of this. I have to start tipping this pot. Oh, the color is beautiful. Really beautiful color. And you can see the larger pieces of meat and texture of the meat. It just makes it more of a satisfying meal. As you can see, we have all of our meat and veggies in the bowl, and there's still some gravy in there, but not enough to really cause an issue. Alright, and now we're going to add our mashed potatoes. So here's our mashed potatoes, and they're nice and soft. And these potatoes make really excellent mashed potatoes because they're very buttery and creamy. So you get your potatoes started first. This is how I do it. Other people do it different ways. But I get my potatoes started first. And then I add my butter. And I just make my butter into pats. Work the butter in the mashed potatoes. You see them starting to loosen and smooth out. Milk always goes in last, and if you have some whipping cream, you can add some whipping cream in there too. The fats in the whipping cream help make it really super silky. Alright, now we can start adding our milk. And add like a quarter cup in the beginning, because you don't want it too soft. Alright, pretty close. Just a little bit more. So usually, if I wasn't baking this, I would add a bit more milk and make it a little looser. But the baking process and the gravy can cause you to have an overly wet mashed potato, and nobody wants that. So it should be good right there. Not too wet, not too stiff. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put that on the top. So now we're going to add our potatoes to the top of our meat. And we're going to go almost to the very top, because we shouldn't really have any issues with gravy boil over. But I like using this particular deep bowl because I think it's just the perfect size in depth. Make sure we get all the air pockets out. I've actually seen somebody pipe their potatoes on, and the finished product was absolutely gorgeous. So if you have the time to pipe it, it causes the parts that have been piped to have a really golden, crispy finish to it, which is lovely. But most of us don't have that much time, especially if you're preparing for a family. Alright. Now, so we can have some crispiness, take our fork, and we're just going to do fluff lines, is what I call it, straight through it. And these finer, thinner pieces on top will brown and have a nice texture to them. You can do whatever pattern you like. Since I've been doing it this way now for a very long time, and it was the way I was taught to do it. And almost there. Alright. Yeah. That's how you make a shepherd's pie. Okay. Let's get this in the oven at 425 for about 20 minutes. And that should brown at the top and get everything mixing in at the bottom. Temperature is now 425. And in goes our shepherd's pie. Top shelf. And I'm going to give it about 20 minutes and check the top and see how brown it's got. Varies per oven. Here is our lovely finished shepherd's pie, and as you can see, got a nice crispy top, nicely caramelized. We had a little bit of seepage right here, but if you had noticed when I was putting it in, I had a tray underneath it on the rack below to catch any seepage, and it was just a little bit, maybe a tablespoon came up at the side there. But all in all, I think she looks beautiful. Alright, so let's go ahead and plate. And so as not to spoil your crust, go ahead and cut through it with a knife, because it is made of skin over this, so doing it this way, you don't drag the skin down into the meat and spoil the presentation of your food. And then we go ahead and we take a spoon, scoop it out. Perfect. And get some more of this meat and gravy here. The smell is absolutely wonderful. I'm going to be first to use smell-o-vision once I've created it. Now we can take this and add some more gravy to it from the pot that we originally cooked the meat in. And there we go. Beautiful. Super quick, easy. See how the chunky the meat is? And fluffy potatoes with a beautifully caramelized top. Yep, this one turned out awesome. So there we go, folks. That's another one of our special recipes. Shepherd's pie. It's awesomely delicious. Your kids will eat it, I guarantee you. So will you and everyone else. The pop of the vegetables is awesome. The texture of the meat has a nice chew to it. This is the way to do it. Try my recipe. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe so you know what I load up in the future. I really appreciate all of you that have given me a thumbs up and subscribed so far. You guys have a blessed evening. That's our man for feed man belly.